Hey guys, welcome to Sonic Academy. I'm Don Kane and today I am going to be looking at texture. It's by a new company called Devious Machines and already they've proven themselves to be amazing with things like this. So to explain first on what it is, kind of a tricky one. Essentially it's a plugin designed to, well, to add texture to any sound you have, so you can drag and drop your own sample. There's a load of preset samples in there, there's a bunch of effects and LFOs, and it basically is for layering in things like, well, for me personally, the reason I came across it was I was looking to add some white noise into a synth to make it sound a little bit more vintage, and that's essentially exactly what I got. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, so let's take a look. So I've got a track on the go here, and there's a bunch of instances of texture being used in there. Before I get into that and show you what it's about, I'll just give you a quick demo of how the track is sounding at the moment. I'm going for a sort of cinematic epic type piece at the moment, so here's a quick preview. So you get the idea. What I'm going to do is I've got an instance here of it's an upright muted piano, I think. Let's have a listen. Yeah, so I'm going to drop in an instance of texture on top, and this is what it looks like. So we've got here is the noise source, so you can select all sorts of noise sources. I mean, I'm not even going to begin to go through them all. If you really want to have a look, then I suggest you get yourself an instance of this, or of course pause the video at any point you want. But there's just a whole bunch of stuff, so whether it's synth effects or vinyl effects or vocals or hi-hats, and it's all about adding texture into the original sound. You can even drag and drop your own samples in there as well, or you can import. You can have it trigger mode, so it just plays the once with every trigger, or it can loop or random or granular. Fairly self-explanatory really. And then the dynamics, you've got a gate and a limit to restrict how it gets triggered in and out. You've got modulation over here, where you can apply LFOs or envelope modulations. You've got an EQ for the textures. This is the additional layer you're adding in, and it's pretty simple drag and drop stuff. And then you've got the original EQ here as well, so you can EQ the input, let's say, and then EQ the affected output as well. You also have a filter over here to filter the additional texture, and then you've got a sidechain effect here as well, and a color dial which changes the timbre of the texture. So that's a very quick rundown of what's available. Let's have a little play with this, I suppose, and see what we can come up with. So if I just deactivate that, and remember that was the piano we've got, and then activate it. And all of a sudden we've got a bunch of white noise coming in. So we can see in the dynamics, for example. So we could limit it to or we could gate it. Like so. Then over in the texture EQ here, we could, for example, filter out all the low end of this white noise. Or we could filter the original if we want. And then we can apply some LFOs as well if we wanted. I won't do too much here. In fact, that's probably not going to change much right now because we're on white noise. But you can flick through. And there are also a whole bunch of presets as well. Very sinister. So some of these have been tuned, some of them are not tuned, so it's kind of hit and miss if I'm honest. However, there are a bunch of, if I go to, for example, there are risers for effects. Clearly this probably won't work with a piano. But would work well in an effects section. We've also got drum tops, which I find really handy. Snare claps, so you can add bite. I'm probably not using a great sample for this. But I'm going to then move on to going back to the track I was working on, because this is where I have used it. And so I used, if I deactivate texture here, I used a fairly simple drum hit, but then adding in an instance of texture. And all I've done is add in some tambourine, but it's just added in a whole bunch of snap to that sound. I believe I've used texture again in the main drum line as well, if I solo that. And it's just a tiny bit of digital noise. I can hear I've probably EQ'd it out somewhere. Oh, I can see it here actually. There's a filter over here. You can see that I've filtered it and sidechained to a certain frequency. And it's just adding a little bit more bite to these drums, which were already fairly cinematic and epic in the first place. And it's just adding that tiny little transient into there. And then lastly on the bass line, which I think probably had the most difference, where I was going for a rich but kind of dirty electronic analog kind of sound, and I just wanted an extra texture in there. So this is the original bass line, which was already fairly gritty and clicky, but I wanted that extra texture, so I obviously used texture and ended up with this. Which is where I ended up, and loved the sound. You've got a mix level here that I think I probably need to tweak a bit later on in the mix. But it instantly adds that sort of saturated, distorted kind of sound, and that's exactly what I wanted in that bass line. So there we go, that's texture. It's available now from Devious Machines. It's a really odd plugin, to be honest. It's one of those ones where it's kind of hit and miss, but I think certainly for adding transients to drums and just making drum sounds a little bit more unique, and 100% in that example with the bass line, adding in a little bit of white noise and then bandpass filter inside chaining it, just adds that extra grit to that bass line. So yeah, all in all, it's a fantastic VST and I highly recommend it. Cheers.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.